They thought it was just another custody fight. They thought it would just be another court date, another argument, another bitter text. They never imagined it would end with a young father lying face down in the dark, a single bullet in the back of his head, while his 4-year-old daughter sat just a few feet away, watching her world explode. This is the story of how a custody battle, a desperate mother, and a violent ex-stepfather collided on a quiet Florida night and turned into a premeditated murder that a jury would later call first degree. This is the murder of Colby Vincent. The night everything broke, March 19, 2023, Navarre, Florida, a sleepy beachside town better known for tourists and sunsets than gunshots. Just before 10 p.m., the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office starts getting 911 calls. Gunshots screaming a man down. Officers race to an apartment complex not far from the water. It's the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happens until tonight. Body cam footage later shows deputies moving fast through the parking lot, flashlights cutting through the darkness. They round the corner of a building and find him, a young man, face down on the concrete. Groceries spilled near the door, blood pooling around his head. "I'm guessing in the back of the head," one deputy says quietly. "You see this right here, all that blood. I guarantee it." Nearby, someone has already picked up a terrified 4-year-old girl. She'd been inside the apartment as her father was shot on his own doorstep. This is 24-year-old Colby Vincent. He was on his way back from the grocery store with his daughter. He carried one load of bags inside and came back for the second. Somewhere between the car and his door, a man stepped out of the darkness and pulled the trigger. It looks, at first, like a robbery gone wrong. Groceries on the floor, a young man dead, a late hour. But when deputies pat him down, they notice something. His phone is still there. His card holder is still there. His valuables are still there. If this was a robbery, the robber left empty-handed. This wasn't about money. The witnesses and the dark officers start canvassing the complex. A woman says she heard yelling, not a whole argument, just a man shouting, then silence. Another neighbor says she heard a loud pop. She thought it was a trash can lid slamming shut, until the dogs in the area went crazy. 2 guys on motorcycles say they had just pulled up when a man walked by and told them, "A body just dropped. You best get home." They didn't know who he was. He just walked off into the night. Piece by piece, a description comes together. White male, somewhere between 5'11" and 6 to a mid-40s to early 50s. Dad bod, build thicker, not skinny, not obese, no obvious beard, short hair, maybe glasses, not exactly a precise ID. There are hundreds of men who look like that within a few miles, but it's a start. And more importantly, it hints that whoever did this didn't run to a car and vanish. He walked calmly, confidently, like he knew exactly what he was doing. A family already at war. As deputies secured the scene, they realize there's more going on here than a random shooting. There's a child involved. And where there's a child, there's custody. Colby's 4-year-old daughter is quickly taken into protective care. Police notify the child's grandmother, Rachel Moore's mother, Christina. She arrives at the complex in a panic. Her granddaughter had only just gone to stay with Colby for the first time in nearly a year. Now an officer has to tell her, "Colby is dead. My granddaughter came to stay with her dad for the first night in over a year," she says. Breaking down, the story begins to unfold. Colby and his ex, Rachel Moore, have been separated for years. Their relationship was strained by what Rachel calls his drug lifestyle. She tells investigators later, Colby started growing and selling marijuana at home. She confronted him, saying this was dangerous with a baby in the house. He didn't stop. She moved back in with her mother for safety even there. Colby allegedly brought drugs and growing operations into her mom's home eventually. She says, enough was enough. Colby moved out. Their daughter stayed with Rachel and Christina. For a long time, Colby only saw his daughter for short visits, mostly on Saturdays, while Rachel was at work. Then one day, Rachel says, she came back to pick up her child and found Colby shaking the baby. He brushed it off as harmless. He told her shaken baby syndrome was just a myth. Rachel didn't see it that way. She says she quit her job on the spot. No more unsupervised time. She would not risk her daughter's life over a man who wouldn't change. From that point on, their paths diverged completely. Colby wanted more time with his daughter. Rachel wanted him out of her child's life entirely. The situation simmered for months, and then boiled over. The court steps in by early 2023. The conflict had moved from bitter texts to formal court filings. Colby pushed for shared custody. Rachel resisted, pointing to his drug use and risky lifestyle. On March 13, 2023, just 6 days before the murder, they finally ended up in front of a judge. Rachel expected to lay out everything: photos, parenting class certificates, evidence of Colby's drug activity, but that's not what happened. The judge had a death in the family. Court time shifted. Rachel's evidence didn't get seen in time. From her point of view, the judge saw only part of the story: a father claiming he'd been cut off from his daughter for too long, and a mother who looked like she was just saying no out of spite. The court ordered 50/50 custody. Rachel says the judge even called her a spiteful mother who wouldn't let the father see his child. She left the courthouse feeling betrayed by the system, by the timing, by everyone, but she was stuck. Court orders aren't suggestions. On Sunday, March 19th, she had to hand her 4-year-old daughter over to Colby for a week. The exchange took place around 6:30 p.m. at a public supermarket near Navarre. Rachel didn't want to see Colby, so her mother, Christina, physically handed the child to him. They watched him buckle their little girl into a car seat. He was smiling. The child was excited, showing off her new boots, asking to go to Waffle House. It should have been the ordinary, painful beginning of a court-ordered week with her dad. A few hours later, deputies were knocking on Rachel's door. Is Presley okay? When deputies show up late at night, people rarely assume it's good news. Rachel opens the door already on edge. Her first question isn't about Colby. Is Presley okay? She's told her daughter is safe. Presley is with authorities and physically unharmed, but Colby is not. Colby has passed away, the deputy tells her. Rachel collapses emotionally. From her point of view, her worst fear has just been confirmed. She believed Colby's lifestyle would bring danger. Now he's dead and their daughter was right there when it happened. Investigators, however, are thinking about something else. Timing. The very first night Colby gets his daughter overnight in almost a year. He's killed outside his front door. That is not a coincidence you can ignore. Two stories of the same man. As detectives dig into Colby's life, they find themselves caught between two very different narratives. Rachel's version to Rachel. Colby was a chronic marijuana grower and seller, someone who brought illegal activity wherever he lived. A man too careless to protect a small child, a risk, not a partner. She says she fought to keep her daughter away from that world. When the court ordered 50/50 custody, she felt the state had forced her child into danger. Colby's family's version to Colby's mother and stepfather. The story is flipped. They describe Rachel as controlling and manipulative. They say she tried to isolate Colby from his family. They claim Colby mostly used marijuana legally. With a medical card, they acknowledge the drug stop incident, but say Rachel lied about not being there. They believe she weaponized that event to make him look like the sole problem. When deputies ask Colby's mom who might want to hurt her son, she doesn't hesitate. Think of her, she says, meaning Rachel, because she didn't win. From her perspective, this is about one thing: custody. Enter Booger, Jason Curtis. The investigation takes a sharp turn when detectives start connecting descriptions and relationships. Remember the white male, 40s, 50s, stocky build, walking away after the shooting. They find someone who fits. Jason Curtis, 53 years old, around 6'4", 235 pounds, dishonorably discharged from the military, known as a violent offender, listed as an officer safety risk. Facebook full of gun photos he calls his collection, and most importantly, Jason Curtis isn't a stranger. He's Christina's ex-husband, Rachel's former stepfather. The man Rachel used to call Booger. License plate readers placed a car tied to Jason's girlfriend, Angela, near Colby's apartment on the night of the murder. Detectives drive up to Alabama, where Jason lives now. They invite Angela to talk. She doesn't deny being in Florida that weekend. In fact, she describes the trip like a romantic getaway. Jason, she says, wanted to show her where he used to live. They drove through Milton, then Navarre. They stopped at a Tom Thumb gas station, used the restroom at a public beach pavilion, visited a liquor store Jason liked right next to the same Publix where the custody exchange occurred. She insists Jason was never away from her long enough to commit a murder, until detectives show her a map. The parking lot that changes everything. The map reveals something chilling. The hotel parking lot where Angela waited in the car shares the same lot as Colby's apartment complex. Jason could step out of the car, cut across the lot, wait in the shadows by Colby's door, fire a single shot when he returned with groceries, walk calmly back across the lot, get into the car and say he'd just used the bathroom 10 minutes. Plenty of time. Then detectives show Angela something else they found in her car, a handwritten note. It lists Colby Vincent, his address in Navarre. Physical description here. Build notes about his daughter. Presley even details about his vehicle. The handwriting matches Jason's. Angela recognizes it immediately. Jason Curtis didn't just happen to pass through Navarre. He came prepared. Someone had given him Colby's full details, or he'd gone to the trouble to collect them himself. Either way, this was not random. The call Rachel can't explain away. Rachel keeps insisting she never asked Jason directly to kill Colby. She just vented. She says she was panicking. She told him about the hearing. He sent her weapon photos. She joked about paying for gas. She claims she thought he was too far away to actually do anything, but then she drops another detail. On the night of March 19th, after the murder, but before police came to her door, Jason called her. She says the call was under a minute. His words, "You don't have to worry about that anymore. I gotta run." Put my face in the wind. She says at that moment she knew he had done something to Colby. Her heart dropped, and she went straight to her phone and scrubbed the message thread, because she knew how bad it would look from victim to principal in the days that follow. Detectives piece together a narrative that's hard to ignore. A mother who fought the court's 50/50 custody order, a violent stepfather obsessed with guns and with protecting the family, a week of rage-filled calls and texts about Colby, a clear address passed along a trip made across state lines, a note with victim details in the killer's car, a hotel parked right next to the victim's home, a single shot to the back of the head, a call afterward. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Jason Curtis is charged with first-degree murder. Rachel Moore is initially charged as an accessory and for tampering with evidence. But as more messages and patterns come out, prosecutors push further. They argue she wasn't just covering up after the fact. She was part of the plan. In their eyes, Rachel shared motive custody and fear shared knowledge address. Routine lifestyle encouraged travel. I'll pay your gas. Accepted his solution destroyed. Evidence once she realized what had happened under Florida law. That makes you more than an accessory. That makes you a principal to murder. The verdicts. Jason Curtis goes to trial first. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Cell data license plate hits the handwritten note. Angela's testimony about their movements, his own contradictions. He's found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. 2 weeks later, Rachel's mother, Christina, is also arrested, but her charges are eventually dropped when new undisclosed evidence appears in her favor. Rachel's case is more complicated. Is she a desperate mother who vented to the wrong man, or a woman who quietly set events in motion, knowing exactly what that man was capable of? In April 2025, a jury decides they find Rachel Moore guilty as a principal to first-degree premeditated murder and guilty of tampering with evidence. She is also sentenced to life in prison. The woman who fought so hard to keep her daughter away from Colby will now never see her grow up outside of a prison visiting room. A child left in the crossfire in the end. 3 people lose everything. Colby Vincent loses his life, Rachel Moore loses her freedom, and most tragically, their daughter Presley loses both parents in one night. 1 bullet, 1 parking lot, 1 custody order, 1 chain of decisions made by adults who all believed, in their own way, that they were fighting for this child. Colby thought he was finally getting the time with his daughter he deserved. Rachel thought the system had failed her and put her child at risk. Jason thought in his twisted, violent way that he was fixing the problem. Instead, he created something far worse. A little girl whose father is dead, and whose mother will grow old behind bars. What this story really shows on the surface. This case is about a Florida shooting, a shadowy figure in the dark, tech evidence and body cam footage, but underneath. It's about how custody battles can turn nuclear, how anger and fear, fed by echo chambers and late-night calls, can become deadly, how one person with a gun and a grudge can turn a legal dispute into a permanent tragedy. Rachel says she never meant for this to happen. Jason claims he didn't pull the trigger. Colby isn't here to say anything at all. But the digital trail, the handwritten note, the timing, and the jury all say the same thing. This wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was premeditation, wearing the mask of protection. So now the question is yours. Was Rachel a victim of her own panic, swept along by a violent man who went too far? Or was she the quiet architect of a plan she always knew might end in blood? Let us know what you think about this case in the comments. Because as long as children, custody, and desperation collide, stories like this won't be rare headlines. They'll be warnings. And somewhere in Florida, a little girl is growing up with a single brutal truth. On one Sunday night, everyone who was supposed to protect her ended up destroying each other instead.